So if there's one person I could bring back to life and take a road trip with, it would be my grandpa, Charlie. We had plenty of driving experiences together, driving up to Oregon to visit family. He was somebody you could just sit in the car with and talk about life, talk about what I learned in school today, or just talk about nothing at all. I think he is the perfect road trip companion. My grandfather was never satisfied with the status quo. He was always pushing to evolve winemaking in his life anyway into something better. Starting with Caymus Cabernet, it continued on into Conundrum, where my grandfather would sit at the dinner table and blend bottles of wine together that you typically would never traditionally blend. So we're here at one of my favorite ranches in Napa Valley. My grandfather has known this family for years and had a long-standing farming relationship with them, which after he passed away, we've continued on. There's a very nostalgic value to being here. Whenever I drive on this property, I get a very warm feeling. I think in everybody's mind, he was an old farmer wearing suspenders and a 10-gallon hat with a feather. And that was him. He was an old school winemaker. He learned how to make wine by reading books. He never had any formal schooling. He really prided himself on that. I got to know my grandfather very well before he passed away. So there's a lot of local character and flavor in the places that we grow grapes for Conundrum. We have Napa, Paicines, Salinas, Arroyo Seco, and Visalia. All of these places grow grapes, different grapes, better than the next place. And that's why we go there for Conundrum. We're looking for the diversity of each one of these sub-regions of California. My great-grandfather, Salvatore, which is on my mother's side of the family, came to Napa Valley in 1923, and they bought this ranch. It was a sheep farm back then, and started planting grapes on it. Sauvignon Blanc tastes so good from Napa Valley because we have heat every day of the growing season, and what the heat does is it sort of zaps out the vegetal characters of Sauvignon Blanc. And then the San Francisco Bay cools down this area every night, so we could have a 100-degree day that cools down to about 50 degrees that same night. Also, the soils are very rich. My nono and noni still live on the property to this day. For Conundrum, we've had to leave Napa Valley to find some other grape varietals that don't grow that well here. The beauty of going outside of one growing region in California and exploring others is when you're trying to make a wine like Conundrum, that is, you really have no rules when it comes to what you can blend. Really taste every part of California in one bottle. So here we are in Paicines in the middle of San Benito County. We're here at the Paicines General Store. We're about 120 miles south of Napa Valley. 3-hour drive away from Napa, and it sure feels like a very different place. This Paicines General Store is your one-stop shop. You can buy toothpaste, buy some antiques, and then leave with a 6-pack of beer if you want. And they make killer chili rellenos. Hopefully we'll get to try some today. This area is very tucked away. It's a sort of an undiscovered part of California. I think most people that are wine drinkers think of wine country being Napa or Sonoma, but you come down here and we grow some great grapes in these areas. I think the star varietal of this region out here is Petite Sirah. You can get Petite Sirah nice and ripe. We do put some Petite Sirah in the Conundrum Red. This area here, this vineyard is owned by a close friend of ours, and they grow some grapes for us. They named the vineyard Pedregal for the rocky outcropping that sort of defines this vineyard. I think my first impression of this area was I've been driving by the turnoff to get here for my whole life, and I never knew that there's a great wine growing region just right under our nose. This area has a very rugged look to it. It feels rugged out here. I really enjoy being out here. You feel a world away from anywhere else in California. So when we first started coming out here, little did we know that my quadruple great grandfather, Moses Stice, lived in a nearby town, and we think he's buried up here in this cemetery. We're gonna take a hike to it and see if we can find him. So Moses came to California in the 1840s on a wagon train. I just couldn't imagine leaving everything behind and going into the unknown in California, leaving from Missouri, where he had an established life. I really admire that in him. I think he was one of the true originals in California. This is a pretty remote place out here. I don't think, unless you knew this was up here, you wouldn't just pull off on the side of the road to come up here to this cemetery. We're looking for the headstone. There's a chance that Moses, when he passed away, his family didn't have enough money to get him a stone headstone. It could have been made of wood, and if it was made of wood, it's probably been long gone, fallen apart, or rotted away. These are headstones that are made of wood. This could have been Moses' headstone. Well, unfortunately, we weren't able to confirm that Moses had his, this was Moses' resting place, but it was a good try anyway. This is Gloria Road, a dirt road that connects Paicines area to the Salinas Valley. It cuts off about 30 miles of unnecessary driving. With that, you have to get onto a washboard dirt road, but that's also the allure of taking a road like this. Definitely no tourists come out here, so you're really all by yourself out here. It's hard to find a state-maintained unpaved road anywhere in California. So here we are in the Salinas Valley, which is the salad bowl of the world. It's amazing to me that this valley floor here produces a bunch of row crop that feeds the world. So a lot of the lettuce and vegetables that people eat around the world are from here. It really is an amazing place, 70 miles long by, I think it averages 4 or 5 miles wide, yet produces a lot of the world's row crop. And that's all that farming is done here in the valley floor. Up here, the Santa Lucia Highlands bench, this is all where all the grapes are grown. We love this area for growing white varietals because of the cool weather. We retain a lot of natural acidity. The breeze comes right off of Monterey Bay, keeps the daytime temperature pretty cool. About 85 degrees would be a fairly warm day here. But we also have sunlight every day, which we get full ripeness from the sunlight. So we have pretty much the best of both worlds. It's an amazingly rich agricultural area. My dad came down here in 1988, loved the wines, saw this open parcel of land, and knocked on the door of a house that was right near the land. And it was, they came to the door. It was a rainy day. He didn't know if they had a shotgun hanging out behind the door. He had no idea what he was stepping into. Anyway, he left that day with a handshake deal to plant the first 20 acres of this ranch. One of my favorite stops in the Salinas Valley is stopping by the Soledad Mission. It's really such a beautiful old building. I love to just walk in there, listen to the music, clear my head. It's really like stepping back in time. We drove down here to Arroyo Seco. We're only a few miles from Salinas Valley. The nearest town here is Greenfield. To grow dark red varietals, you need a lot of heat, and you need cool nights. So warm days or hot days and cool nights, and that is what Arroyo Seco provides for us. The view sort of speaks for itself. The vineyard is crown pruned, meaning that we don't have any trellis wires. So the vine is sort of grown as a bush, The only vineyards you see nowadays that were planted to this sort of trellis were planted 80 years ago. You really you build a layered wine by having diversity in the vineyards. So, for example, a red varietal planted to a crown-trained trellis as opposed to a vertical trellis, you're gonna have two very different flavor profiles, even if they're the same type of grape. One great thing about Conundrum is that we source the fruit from other vineyards that are family-run. And this really adds an important element to what we do. We know the history of the land, we know the families. If I were gonna camp in a vineyard, I'd love to pull my sleeping bag out and sleep right here in one of these rows. Just looks like a real comfortable place to be. I got a 3-hour drive ahead of me to Visalia. It's where we source a very important ingredient to our Conundrum white. It's amazing to me, it's such a dry, arid, flat place, yet it produces one of the most floral grapes in the world. It's a great long drive. I love to sit in the truck and kind of just space out, remove myself from the workday. One of my favorite parts of the wine industry is getting to travel all over, especially the beautiful state of California. And what's great is we know that the journey isn't over yet, and we still have a lot more exploring left to do.